Rock stars have thrown piles of money away on all sorts of weird things, including tanks, hovercraft, and lion cubs, but you'll never guess which one spent a fortune on his model train set. A 2001 jam session between legendary guitarist Eddie Van Halen and rock band Limp Bizkit gave the Van Halen founder an excuse to utilize one of his favorite toys, a small tank. In his book, Eruption in the Canyon, 212 Days and Nights with the Genius of Eddie Van Halen, Andrew Bennett revealed that Van Halen wasn't impressed with Limp Bizkit's incessant weed smoking and bolted from the jam, leaving his equipment behind. When Van Halen's subsequent calls to Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst to return his gear were ignored, the guitarist escalated the situation. Eddie once bought an assault vehicle from a military auction. Eddie drove that assault vehicle through LA into Beverly Hills, then parked and left it running on the front lawn of the house Limp Bizkit was rehearsing in. When Durst answered the door, Van Halen reportedly held a handgun to his head and ordered the singer to retrieve his gear. Eddie Van Halen stood on the front lawn of a residential home in Beverly Hills in broad daylight, smoking a cigarette while holding a gun on Fred Durst as he went back and forth from the house to the assault vehicle, lugging amps and guitars. After his 2009 death, reports emerged that Michael Jackson was close to $500 million in debt. That wasn't surprising given the way he burned through money, including the creation of a theme park and zoo at his Neverland Ranch, and his reported attempt to purchase the remains of John Merrick, aka the Elephant Man, from a London medical school. Back in his pop star heyday, Jackson spent $125,000 on a hyperbaric chamber after he was accidentally set on fire filming a Pepsi commercial. In 1986, Jackson's manager, Frank DeLeo, confirmed to USA Today that the singer was planning to sleep in it in order to slow down his body's aging process, even though doctors had advised against it. Michael says it is good for his body. I can't figure him out sometimes. Jackson later told Oprah it was just a weird rumor, but a decade after his death, the device was discovered in a shipping container housed within a warehouse. Elvis Presley spared no expense when furnishing his iconic Memphis estate, Graceland. Along with Presley's famed Jungle Room, there was a lesser-known room entirely devoted to his collection of talking mynah birds. Graceland archivist Angie Marchese told The Express that the mynah birds living in the bird room would overhear Graceland mates discussing Presley and repeat what they heard. The funniest story I've ever heard about the mynah birds is that when they would hear that Elvis wasn't home, they would say, "Elvis isn't home right now. Elvis isn't home right now." But then when Elvis was home, the mynah birds would continue to tell people, "Elvis isn't home right now. Elvis isn't home right now," even though he was home, which was kind of funny. These days, there are no longer any mynah birds living at Graceland. Graceland's bird room is now used as a storeroom for supplies. When Guns N' Roses guitarist Slash made enough money to purchase a Los Angeles mansion, he outfitted the place with a unique array of pets. In his autobiography, Slash wrote, "I installed a full-on reptile zoo over there. Just a gazillion snakes and all kinds of stuff." In addition to reptiles, Slash also had a pet mountain lion, whom he'd named Curtis. Pinball machine creator John Borg recalled meeting Curtis when he was about 8 months old, telling Far Out, "He was as friendly as your average house cat. He was much larger than a house cat, a little bigger than a German Shepherd." When Slash's home was heavily damaged in an earthquake, he decamped to a hotel with Curtis in tow. What happened next was like a scene straight out of The Hangover. Slash wrote, "We snuck him into the Four Seasons in his cage and locked him in our bathroom. But not for long. As Slash left his room and headed out to dinner, he saw Curtis following him down the hall, having somehow managed to escape from his cage and open both the bathroom door and the hotel room door." Slash wrote, "I realized that we had to deal with him immediately, so I called a friend who was an animal caretaker who picked him up and took him up to Canyon Country, where a friend of mine had a facility that housed exotic animals." Slash's bandmate Axl Rose also became infamous in the music business for a strange expense of a very different sort. On one occasion, he discovered that his favorite yellow jacket had been accidentally left behind in England while Guns N' Roses was touring. With a big show coming up on an entirely different continent, a rock star-level plan was hatched to get that jacket back. While discussing his TV series Roadies, rock journalist turned movie director Cameron Crowe told Entertainment Weekly, "So a roadie was given the job to get on a plane as fast as possible, go to London, find Axl Rose's yellow jacket, and come back so he could play the show. Sending a roadie on back-to-back transcontinental flights to retrieve a jacket is so extreme that the incident has become legendary among the tight-knit roadie community." Crowe said, "The best part about that story is not that somebody had to go get a yellow jacket for Axl Rose, but that it became such lore among other roadies that it became a verb, to yellow jacket." Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page has long been fascinated with British occultist Aleister Crowley. Page collected artifacts once owned by the so-called wickedest man in the world, including his manuscripts and other memorabilia. The most expensive piece of Crowley's history that Page purchased, however, was Crowley's house.
That sort of love of all things mystical and magical, all things bright and beautiful, really.
Sitting on the banks of Scotland's Loch Ness, the sinister history of Boleskine House extended far earlier than Crowley. According to lore, the home was built upon the site of a church that burned to the ground while full of worshippers. Page told Rolling Stone in a 1975 interview, "The bad vibes were already there. A man was beheaded there, and sometimes you can hear his head rolling down." Of course, after Crowley, there have been suicides, people carted off to mental hospitals. Page's efforts to restore the decaying home to its former glory cost him thousands over the years, until he eventually sold the property in the early 1990s. 2 subsequent fires had left the place a complete ruin by the time a foundation purchased the home, spending millions more in restoration efforts. While Rod Stewart is widely known for his love of soccer, he's such an aficionado that he had his own soccer pitch built in the sprawling back garden of his British country estate. He's just as passionate about model trains. In fact, his home in Beverly Hills features a special room housing his massive train set. Stewart told the Mirror, "It can never be moved. I have 13 trains running at once. For me, the pleasure has been in the building of it."
Does it help you switch off?
It really does. It's the finest hobby.
Model trains are surprisingly popular in rock star circles. Neil Young has his own elaborate setup at his Northern California ranch, while Roger Daltrey, Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, and Bruce Springsteen are also model train buffs. Stewart, however, has taken his love affair with trains to a whole other level, as he rents out a second hotel room while on tour, which he uses to work on his model trains. He said, "When I'm on the road in hotel rooms, like the Ritz-Carlton in New York, they clear out a room for me. All my cases come in, and they set up tables and lamps, and it becomes my workshop." U2 frontman Bono took a page out of Axl Rose's playbook when he remembered that he'd left his favorite hat in London and wanted to wear it during a performance in Modena, Italy, alongside famed tenor Luciano Pavarotti. According to The Telegraph, Bono plunked down more than $1,200 for a first-class plane ticket so that his hat could make it to Modena in time for the show. Legend has it that the flight crew was so fearful that the hat might become damaged in transit that it was taken from its first-class seat and placed in the cockpit with the captain, where it safely sat for the remainder of the flight. A driver picked it up and delivered it to Bono before the show. ZZ Top's 1976 Worldwide Texas Tour was an elaborate production intended to bring Texas to the rest of the country, as the trio bought an assortment of wildlife from the Lone Star State on the road with them. This traveling menagerie included a Texas longhorn steer, a buffalo, a few buzzards, some rattlesnakes, and a howling wolf that was actually just a German shepherd backed by a tape recording of an actual wolf. All that livestock reportedly cost the band a hefty $140,000, but the complications involved in touring with all those critters were more than just monetary. That was the case when one of the buzzards got free and began flying above the audience, resulting in the band halting the show so its trainer could attract its attention and convince it to swoop down and land on his white hat. Even worse, however, was the time the buffalo made a break for it. ZZ Top guitarist Billy Gibbons told the Los Angeles Daily News, "The only time it got sticky was when the buffalo made his escape. One afternoon, we played Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh, and I'll never forget seeing the trainer in a golf cart trying to catch up to the buffalo stampeding and zigzagging across third base to home plate." Prior to Keith Moon's tragic death at the age of 32, the drummer for The Who was renowned for his displays of rock star excess, famed for such antics as driving a Rolls-Royce into a swimming pool and trashing so many hotel rooms that he was permanently banned by Holiday Inn.
So when people say, "Keith, have you ever smashed up a hotel room?" I say, "Yes, well, 3 in one fell swoop."
Moon also once purchased a small hovercraft that had been designed to carry a single person. He would often pilot the vehicle to places where a hovercraft typically wouldn't go, including the bedroom of houseguest George Lazenby, best known for playing James Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Perhaps the most infamous anecdote involving Moon's hovercraft was the time he flooded its engine and stalled the vehicle on a set of railway tracks while dressed in a Nazi uniform. His daughter Mandy told Universal Music, "What I mostly remember is going down to the pub on the hovercraft. That wasn't Moon's only out-there purchase. He also bought an open-sided milk truck, known in British parlance as a milk float, which he customized by transforming it into a portable living room, complete with telephone, furniture, and record player. Mandy Moon said, "The milk float had a couch on it, and it was like a living room. It was so funny." Lady Gaga isn't just an internationally famous pop star and Hollywood actor, she's also a committed believer in the paranormal. That's been evident in her well-known contention that she's the reincarnated embodiment of her late Aunt Joanne. She claimed her mother saw a light enter her belly while she was engaged to Gaga's father. Gaga told Vanity Fair, "She believes that Joanne came into the room and sort of okayed her for my dad, and that Joanne transferred her spirit into my mom." According to a 2010 report from Ireland Online, Gaga's belief in the spirit realm extends beyond mere reincarnation. In fact, she is reportedly so terrified of encountering malevolent supernatural entities that she brings in a hired team of paranormal investigators to scan hotels and will only stay in places that have been given the all-clear. She supposedly shelled out nearly $40,000 on electromagnetic field meters designed to detect the presence of ghosts. A source told the outlet, "She believes in paranormal activity and won't take any risks when she is on the road. It's important to her to be safe from spirits."